Hello and welcome to another monthly episode of Conservative Corner. I am your host, Tom Mountain. I am a Republican State Committee man representing this district, which includes Newton, and also, in particular, pertaining to the subject which we're covering tonight, I am also the Vice Chair of the Massachusetts Republican Jewish Committee. And usually, we will specifically deal with topics of political interest. We will bring in candidates. We will deal with the political issues of the day. But in this particular episode, we are going to be talking about something which is very interesting and very important and really fascinating. And I thought that, as do many of my colleagues, that this would be something of great interest to the Jewish community here in Newton, but not just the Jewish community, but also the community in general and in the eastern Massachusetts as well, where hopefully this episode will be aired. My guest tonight is Dr. Stephen Gerzoff, and he is a radiologist. And he has a very interesting story to tell. But please, if you would just give us a brief bio, Doctor.
Hi, my name is Steve Gerzoff. I'm a local radiologist. I've been in Newton for 50 years. I'm your friend, I'm your doctor, I'm your neighbor. I'm the guy in the green canoe who with a clam rake is cleaning out the broken bottles and the glass from Crystal Lake. And I've come with an interesting story that sort of fell into my lap. This past winter in Florida, I was called by a friend to get down to FAU, Florida Atlantic University. They said, get down here right away, you're going to love it. And I went down to FAU and discovered something that chilled me to the bone. There was a line of students waiting to see some exhibit, and at the end I saw a cattle car, an exact replica of the cattle cars used to transfer Jews from all over Nazi Europe to the Holocaust killing centers. Now, I personally come from a Holocaust family. One of my cousins was with the Bielski partisans. They were the famous group that a movie was made of with Daniel Craig, who played 007. That was in 2008. And another cousin who, at age 14, joined another partisan group to fight against the Nazis. She won her own submachine gun at age 14, so it sort of flows in my veins. Seeing this replica naturally caught my interest. I went up and found out it is an educational opportunity for students. It was designed for students by students. A woman named Jordana Leibowitz designed this as a teaching experience with an immersive quality where the students could go into the cattle car, and then mounted in the ceiling were video projectors that showed slides of the time period. It was written in a voice that teenagers, high school students, and college students would understand. I'm an old guy. I write for medicine. They wouldn't understand me. This was perfect. Once my wife and I got into this, the door was closed. We were inside with about 25 students. I think we have a slide of the inside, which we can show now. That's slide 3. We realized that nobody said anything. Here you can see the students next to me. I've blocked out their faces. You can see some of the videos or the projections on the screen. It's the inside of a cattle car. The walls are rough wood. You get the feeling like you're in 1942 in the darkness. Among these students, no one laughed, no one cried, no one joked, no one breathed, no one checked their emails. They all watched in stunned silence. And when we walked out, they continued the silence. It's as if we were walking from the modern Florida sun, had been back in 1942 and actually felt it, and then came into the modern era. It was very, very impactful. When we walked out, my wife Gail and I, we were stunned. My wife said to me, Steve, we have to bring this to the students in Newton. And it's coming. It's coming to Newton in April 17th to 24th. I mentioned this to the mayor. She was very much in favor of it and wanted it to start off at City Hall, where she would introduce it, and then it would go to the high schools.
So this is an actual boxcar. This is a physical train. This is like a traveling exhibition.
Exactly. It's the exact dimensions. The original boxcars were 26.8 feet by 7.2 feet. I only know because I looked it up. That's about 200 square feet. If you pack in 150 people, there's standing room only. There was no heat, no light, no refrigeration, no cooling, no food, no water. They were stuck in there, and these trains got stuck on the side, on sidings, while other trains passed by, either passenger or military. And they could be in this boxcar for 5 or 6 days. Sometimes when they arrived at the killing centers, half of them were already dead from starvation or disease.
Now, when this is currently where?
Right now it's in Florida. It was designed in Florida. It fits on a flatbed truck and travels on Route 95. It has been all the rage amongst the Florida schools. They've been vying for each other to get them because they found it to be such an impactful experience.
So this would be brought to Newton, and Newton students would enter the cattle car, which took the Jewish victims to their deaths. And would it be an interactive subject inside? Would they show videos, or what would they do inside?
It's interactive in the sense that there are videos shown that progressively go from 1933, for example, when Hitler took power, to the creation of the killing fields. The recent Ken Burns special showed book burning. Yeah. Heinrich Heine, one of the famous German poets, had an expression: burning books will end with burning people. And within 10 years, they had crematoria burning people.
So specific to this boxcar, this cattle car, the students would come in, they would feel the, shall we say, the claustrophobic nature of it, the imprisoned nature of it, and then you would show slides or videos talking about the Holocaust, what happened, and by the way, this is what they were transported in to take them to the death camps. So the students would in turn feel or get some type of, if not feeling, some type of, shall we say, introduction, good introduction to what the Holocaust was and what the people went through as they were being transported.
It's a great introduction, but it's not claustrophobic. Yeah. As you can see, the way the original cars were built, they were just slats. Yeah. You can see through it, so you don't feel, this was for cattle. And they put people in. So it's not packed that tight. We don't put 150 students in.
No, certainly, but what I'm saying is when you describe it to them, those were packed to capacity.
Yes.
The people were packed in like sardines, and in all types of weather, whether it's 10 below zero, whether it's 100 degrees out, they were packed in there, and to your point, they would also say they would be there for days and sometimes weeks, depending on where in Europe they were transported from. And the purpose of these trains was to bring people to their deaths, and we have to emphasize that it was to bring people to their deaths. And you know, and Steve, this is a wonderful exhibition in that it rather than have people lecture about the Holocaust and rather than well, what I was going to say is, back in the day, not too long ago, we would bring in survivors to the schools, actual survivors. However, most of the survivors, nearly all of them, are either extremely late, or rather extremely old, too old to speak to students, or they're gone. You know, because you got to figure, World War II, most of the World War II veterans are gone. They're in their 90s. Most of the Holocaust survivors as well are either dead or in their 90s, and they're not able to articulate this. Stephen Ross was the founder of the New England Holocaust Memorial. I got to know him very well, and I used to bring him to lectures, and he used to lecture on this subject, as did others. But they're no longer with us. They're not here anymore. So, because they're not here, we need to have reminders and to educate the students in whatever way we can in the absence of these Holocaust survivors who, just because of time and because of the decades, are no longer with us. So this is very good. This is very important, because it's something that outside of the classroom that kids will go into, and then you talk to them while they're standing in here, and then in the cattle car, and then you talk to them about what this was and what it was there for, and this is what happened.
Exactly. It's experiential in that on the way in, there's a docent that explains what they're going to see and explains the purpose of it. There was no fear amongst the students. There was just unbelievable interest. A lot of them hadn't even heard of it. Now, the Holocaust is a unique event. It's sometimes kidnapped in like cultural appropriation, but Ashvishim, Auschwitz, the small town in Poland. The only thing it had going for itself before the war was that it was a railroad hub. That's why the Germans picked it, because all the railroads came there. And this was murder on an industrial scale. They took Jews from the countryside, they moved them into the villages and the towns, into ghettos. They were trapped in the ghettos. From the ghettos, they were trapped and forced into the trains. From the trains, they came out into Auschwitz or the other killing centers. There was no escape. From the outset, it was designed to exterminate.
You know, Steve, in the absence of the Holocaust survivors, now the burden, or shall we say the mission, for explaining the Holocaust to the new generation has fallen upon the second generation, the children or grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. And I believe you mentioned that you were of that genre?
Yes, they were my cousins. But knowing that, for example, when the Yom Kippur War broke out in 1973, I was a junior radiologist, but board certified at University Hospital in Boston. Within 3 days, I made some phone calls, and 2 days after that, I was on a plane to Israel replacing a radiologist who'd been lost. I was awarded a Yom Kippur ribbon. And so I'm very close to this. And when I saw this, I agreed with my wife. So we have to take this to the students.
This is fascinating, and that would encompass a whole nother program, and maybe we'll do that, about your experience in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. But it almost seems like it was embedded in your psyche, because of you had family victims of the Holocaust, that now in 1973 Israel is really on the verge of being overrun, extinction, shall we say. And you saw it as your duty, as your mission, to go to Israel as a medical doctor to help out in whatever way you could. And you did. You were on the Golan Heights, from what I understand.
Well, in that regard, when I talk about it to my wife, who we married after that, she wouldn't have let me go, she said. I said I was in the right place at the right time with the right stuff. Those are 3 R's. We teach reading, writing, arithmetic to our students. I'd like to teach them how to be in the right place at the right time with the right stuff for what they find in their lives, so that they can be upstanders, certainly, not just bystanders.
But, you know, and the other thing that's happening, Steve, is that the further we get from World War II, and the further we get as the World War II generation passes, the memory of World War II will pass with them. And really, it's up to the second, third, and fourth generations to keep the memory alive. And in particular, that pertaining to the Holocaust, because the Holocaust, as you mentioned earlier, the word genocide was created just for the Holocaust, in that nothing like this had ever happened before. And I was reading surveys that, I don't know if it's most, but many, a large percentage of college students, not even high school students, are not familiar with the Holocaust and what it entails, even though it was probably certainly the most traumatic event outside of specific warfare during the 20th century, in that you had so many millions who were killed, who were just specifically killed on a mass scale, just because they were Jews and other groups such as gypsies and other minorities as well, but primarily Jews on an industrial scale, as you said. And this had never happened before. And the reality is that yes, we have these memorials, yes, we have these preserved death camps in Europe, but those are in Europe, they're not here. And the American public, the American students, need to be educated on this, because, you know, I mean, we cannot conceive of something like that ever happening here. But, you know, they always thought that in a civilized country like Germany or France, it would never happen, and it did. And you don't know what's really going to happen in 50 to 100 years. As the wise philosopher Santayana once said, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
Are condemned to repeat it.
Exactly.
In that regard, I have a couple of quotes that I brought up from some famous people. Louis D. Brandeis, Justice of the Supreme Court some years ago, to expose falsehood and fallacy, to avert evil by education, the remedy is more speech, not enforced silence. So what is the enforced silence today? Cancel culture. So we might be on that road. I hope not. Germany's famous writer, Heinrich Heine, once said, "Those who burn books will in the end burn people," as I mentioned before. A lot of it is because people, unlike Daniel Patrick Moynihan, believe they have their own facts. He said everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And unfortunately, the the tone in anti-Semitism today is not just a collection of hateful sentiments. It's become an organizing principle used by many totally different political ideologies. They prey on our students with historical revisionism, such as the Holocaust never happened, cultural appropriation, intersectionality, like everybody's a victim. You just have to find out what their victim is and you can get them on your side. Biased reporting and teaching. Use of false equivalences, like the Berlin Wall was only 11 feet. The Israeli fence is 33 feet. Well, the Berlin Wall was to keep people in,
yes.
And it had shotgun
Exactly.
towers, whereas the Israel Wall keeps homicide bombers out.
Exactly. But, you know, and you touched on anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism, which is Jew hatred, has always been with us. And it is rising its head in this country and in Europe as well. And there was something striking. It was a front cover of Newsweek a few years ago that showed young Jews, and they were leaving Europe, and it said Jews are leaving Europe again. And it was because the rise of anti-Semitism. And of course, this is where the Holocaust took place, in Europe at that time. And in a very brief period of time, 6 million Jews were killed, were murdered in Europe. And it wasn't just the Germans and Nazis. They had a lot of help from the surrounding countries.
Yes.
And we could get into this topic, and it's a fascinating topic, just the topic of the evil of the Holocaust and how they were able to do it. But the point is they had a lot of help from surrounding countries. I mean, I could pontificate on this and go on, but I remember when I was at Brandeis, my professor Leon Chick, who was a Newton resident, a very famous Holocaust teacher, he once said that if you were a Jew living in a fascist country during World War II, like Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, your chances of surviving, or Hungary, were much greater than if you were a Jew living in a democracy. For example, in France, the French authorities collected the Jews and deported them, or tried to deport them, long before the Germans even asked for them. Same thing in Holland, same thing in Belgium. In Italy, however, Italian soldiers were known to have opened fire upon the Germans who came for the Jews. In Hungary, so many Hungarian Jews survived because the Hungarian fascist government, which was allied with Adolf Hitler, refused to turn the Jews over until the very last minute when the Germans occupied the country at the end
Correct.
of World War II. So the point being is that there's just a lot of fascinating history pertaining to the Holocaust, how it happened and why it happened, and just the warning that it could happen again. And why could it happen again? Because it's happened before. And this needs to be communicated to students, and not to your point earlier, with this moral equivalency of that, you know, it's the equivalent of other ills, societal ills or historical injustices that this country has suffered. For example, the relocation of the American Indians, Native Americans, slavery. But the Holocaust stands alone. Yes, we had slavery in this country, but the purpose of slavery was to enslave people, keep them healthy, and to enslave them. The purpose of the Holocaust was to exterminate people. And so the Holocaust stands alone. You know, when you mentioned the moral equivalency, and some educators will try to connect the two. Will try to connect the two of America's past ills.
That's a false equivalency.
There's no connection between the two
Yes.
of them, because again, the purpose of the Holocaust, what the Germans did, was to murder Jews. Slavery wasn't to murder the slaves. That was against the priorities of the slave owner. They would have been crazy to. The same thing with the Native Americans. They wanted to relocate them, expel them, call it what you will. And what I fear, or what I'm concerned about rather, is that educators will co-opt the Holocaust, something like this, to like the presentation that you're making, and try to say, well, okay, you know, we have this cattle con, this is what happened to the Jews, but don't forget, you know, what happened on the Trail of Tears with the Cherokees and this and that. Well, the Trail of Tears with the Cherokees wasn't to kill them, it was to move them from Georgia to Oklahoma. Right. And that's what you're going to see happening, and that's my main concern. What do you think?
Well, I think that it all started with hatred.
Yes.
And the most important thing we have to do with our students is teach them how to recognize hatred, how to recognize that someone is trying to get them to hate.
Yes.
Hate is not inborn. You're not born with hatred.
Certainly.
It is taught. It
Yes.
is learned. And if you happen to be in a situation everybody around you is hating somebody, that's when you should stand up and say why and find out what's really going on instead of just going on and join in and go along to get along. Germany started this back in the early 1930s with hatred, with closing shops, with kicking Jews out of professions, with claiming they were carriers of disease, with demeaning them, with educating their population that the Jews were the fault of why they lost World War I. They were stabbed in the back by Jews. Anti-Semitism or Jew hatred was a convenient excuse. Going back to the bubonic plague, they blamed it on the Jews.
You know, Steve, recently, and this was all over the news, it was on the weekend of September 11th, 9/11, the commemoration of the bombings in 2001. Some hoodlums, call them what you will, had banners over Route 1 in Saugus saying, the Jews did 9/11, which means the Jews are responsible for 9/11, just like you alluded to, the Middle Ages, where people said that the Jews are responsible for the bubonic plague and other ills in history. And this is, you know, you would think that today, in this day and age, 2022, that we would be well beyond that, but there's repeating these blood libels as they did in the 13th and 14th century, which is really bizarre. It's really bizarre, and there's just some strange psychosis that really says, when in doubt, blame the Jews, who are probably, you know, just in terms of percentages in the world, don't even register a percentage point. I mean, we're talking maybe 12, 18 million people at most, including Israel.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's always the blame the Jew philosophy. And the program that you're introducing, it's so vital because it will tell the story. And again, by bringing the boxcar, the cattle car, and showing the students and getting them out of the classroom and showing the students, it creates really, they have to use their imagination, and it's something that they will go home and think about. And it's also something that in future years, I think, based on the dramatization of this, that they will remember, because it's an experience that they will have gone through. And you know, the thing is, we can't, being here in America, we can't bring the Holocaust to them, because, or rather, we can't bring them to the Holocaust in that this isn't France, Germany, Poland. You can't bring them to the sites. We have nothing like that in America, thank God. Which is why traveling exhibitions like this are very, very important. And I'd also stress that we have the New England Holocaust Memorial in Boston, which everyone should go to visit. It's right next to Faneuil Hall and Quincy Market, and you walk through there, and within 5 minutes you will know exactly what happened with the Holocaust. You will know and understand that. And the important thing is that really we have to get the message out to people. And this gets the message out to people, and you will see other, and hopefully more things like this will come about. And this is an ingenious idea. It really is.
Well, the focus of this, although it's on Jews, obviously for the Holocaust, it really talks about hatred and what hatred can do. And it's not just hatred against Jews. It's against blacks. It's against Asians. It's against anybody. You can pick any group and try to focus other people against it because of your personal dislike, or you called it a psychosis. Obviously, there's something wrong with people who have to create this idea that whatever Israel does is wrong, whatever Jews do is wrong. It can't be good. Call it pinkwashing or greenwashing, where, you know, Israel does good things for the environment, but they try to say, they just say that, you know, to cover what they're doing to
you know, that's an interesting point, because when one focuses exclusively on Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, and tries to attach all these societal ills to Israel, whereas, and they're ignoring other countries in the world, especially communist China, what they're doing to the Muslims in the western part of China, you have to ask the question, well, why are they focusing on Israel? Well, what does Israel have that's unique to other countries? Well, Israel is a Jewish state. And so they're focusing on Israel because it is a Jewish state. It's because of this long tradition of anti-Semitism in the world, which again has no logic. But you can understand the logic of their warped reasoning, why they're focusing on Israel. Why? Because it's a Jewish state. That's why they're doing it.
But also they can focus because it's a democracy. It's an open society. Reporters can go there.
That's right.
There are more reporters in Israel than in all of the Arab world combined. They're free to go there. When they go into Arab-controlled territories, they're not allowed to report. If they get shown taking pictures of someone launching rockets, they're threatened within an inch of their lives.
Right. You know, there's a direct line from the Holocaust, World War II, to Israel. And I was told once by an elderly Holocaust survivor, and he said to me, Tom, the worst Holocaust that the Jews endured is not the one that happened in World War II. The worst Holocaust will be the elimination of the Jewish state, the destruction of the Jewish state, where you have all the Jews in one place, and all it takes is really several nuclear bombs to destroy them. I'm referring, of course, to Iran. That could happen. And we have to be leery of this. Now, why is Iran obsessed with Israel? Because it's a Jewish state, a Western outpost there. Now, I know I don't want to get into this aside from the fact that
I'll just finish that thought. It's not just Israel. Israel they call the little Satan. The big Satan is the United
America,
States.
But Israel's
and
more
once
convenient.
they kill Israel, if they can, the next day it's going to be, and now on to the United States.
I would love, we need another hour with this. We'd love to have you back, but we have to wrap up because we have about 30 seconds left. Dr. Gerzoff, you're doing a wonderful thing, a wonderful mitzvah. I encourage this tremendously. I'm glad you have the support of the city as well. You should, and we're going to see this in the spring. And
April 17th
We're going to talk
starts.
about this again long prior to that. I thank you. Thank you again for this.
My pleasure,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Mountain.
The boxcar plays heavily in my mind because that's the transition from being a human being to becoming a number.
For them to understand the struggles that they've read about, to actually see it, to be a part of it, to feel it, that will stay with them. Their memories are now our memories.
You know, reliving history and being able to experience it in this way is putting light on this subject in a way that's relatable for our students, that they can think about how they can apply what they've learned to their own lives and what's going on in the world around us.
Walking inside, it was definitely eerie at first and cold, and primary sources we go to for this, they're getting older, so we gotta, as a younger generation, remember and bring the importance up.
We read about it all the time, but no one understands how major it was. It forces you to realize what it was actually like.
It just gave me a greater appreciation for just what they went through.
You hear about it so much, and you really take the moment to sit down and think. The parents not even knowing what to do, not even knowing what's going to happen to them, not even going to know what's going to happen to their kids.
I just can't imagine the atrocity, and I'm afraid it's happening again.
I wish every legislator in that building could watch the stories unfold, because it would change our perspective.
It was really powerful. You felt like you were in the car, and you felt like people were talking to you and that they were there with you. And we all know the story that's being told in there, but to have it told in that fashion was really powerful. And this is not sitting in a classroom watching a slideshow or even logging in online. I mean, once you're in that rail car and the door closes and you feel like you could not get out if you needed to, it's super powerful.
I think this type of education is incredibly important. I am disgusted by anyone who denies that the Holocaust happened, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we not only call those people out, but we do our best to educate the next generation.
You can hear about stories, you could read some of the history. This is actually stepping into history and really puts you there.
The response has been overwhelming. The impact has exceeded our wildest expectations, and we want to do more. We need to get this in front of as many students and parents, adults, people of all faiths and backgrounds to stand up against anti-Semitism, to learn from history, to not repeat the mistakes of the past, to stand up to hate now. We need to bring it everywhere. Please reach out to us. Let's get it to every school and community, not only in Florida, around the country. Let's bring this tour, this Hate Ends Now tour, to everyone so they too can say, hate ends now.
Check it out. Hate Ends Now exhibit. We wish you